So, when you hear the name Hadrian, what comes to mind? Probably Hadrian's Wall, right? Or maybe you remember him as one of Rome's 5 good emperors. But the real story? Oh, it is so much more complicated than that. He was a man of these deep, almost impossible contradictions, a visionary builder and a ruthless tyrant, a lover of high culture and a brutal conqueror. Let's try to unravel the paradox that is Emperor Hadrian.
So to really get a handle on Hadrian, we have to start with the central puzzle of his entire reign. How could one man be seen in such radically different ways by the people around him?
Historical accounts like this one really struggled to pin him down. They paint this picture of a total enigma, someone capable of incredible kindness one moment and just shocking brutality the next. And this isn't just us looking back 2,000 years later. The people who lived under his rule, they felt the exact same way.
And that divide is just so stark. On the one hand, later historians would celebrate him as a benevolent autocrat, this enlightened ruler who stabilized the whole empire. But on the other hand, the Roman Senate, the very people he was supposed to govern with, they saw him as remote and authoritarian. They never, ever trusted him. And to understand why, we've got to look at how he got the top job in the first place. You see, his reign didn't kick off with some grand vision or a promise of peace and prosperity. Nope. It began with suspicion and with blood, a move that would define his relationship with Rome's powerful elite forever.
The timeline of his rise to power is, well, it's pretty damning. In August of 117 AD, Emperor Trajan dies, but then this adoption document naming Hadrian as his heir shows up, and it's shady. It's signed by Trajan's wife, Plotina, not the emperor himself. Rumors of forgeries started flying immediately, and then, just a few months later, 4 of Rome's most powerful senators, all of them potential rivals to Hadrian, were rounded up and executed without so much as a public trial.
So yeah, you can imagine this act completely soured his relationship with the Senate beyond any hope of repair. He swore up and down he had nothing to do with the executions, tried to blame it on his praetorian prefect, but the damage was done. For the rest of his life, the Senate would see him not as a partner, but as a tyrant who grabbed power by simply killing off his enemies.
But here's the paradox, right? This same emperor, the guy viewed as a ruthless autocrat in the city of Rome, had a completely different vision for the rest of the empire. He didn't see it as a territory to be exploited from afar. He saw it as this grand commonwealth that needed to be cultivated and strengthened. Get this, he spent more than half of his 21-year reign outside of Italy. Just let that sink in for a second. Most emperors ruled from the comfort of the palace, reading reports. Not Hadrian. He wanted to see every single corner of his empire with his own eyes. He wasn't just a ruler, he was an inspector, an architect, a constant presence out in the provinces. And what did he do on these incredible journeys? He built. My goodness, did he build. From his famous wall in Britain that marked the northern frontier, all the way to finishing the spectacular temple of Olympian Zeus in Athens, his projects were monumental. He wasn't just fortifying the empire, he was beautifying it, investing in infrastructure that would last for centuries, like the iconic Pantheon that still stands in Rome today.
Now, what was at the heart of this grand vision? It was his deep, passionate love for Greek culture. In fact, it earned him the nickname Graeculus, or the Greekling. For Hadrian, Hellenism wasn't just some hobby. He believed it was the cultural glue that could bind his vast, diverse empire into a single, civilized whole. And this love for all things Greek, it went deep into his personal life, too. It led to one of the most famous and frankly tragic love stories of the entire ancient world. It's a story that shows us a different side of Hadrian, one that was deeply emotional, obsessive, and yet still profoundly autocratic.
The youth was a Greek boy named Antinous, who became Hadrian's beloved companion. When Antinous tragically drowned in the Nile River, Hadrian's grief was just bottomless, and it was incredibly public. One historian even wrote that he wept like a woman, a comment that really shows you how shocking and unconventional this emotional display was for a Roman emperor.
But his reaction went way, way beyond just grief. First, he founded an entire city, Antinopolis, right on the spot where his lover died. Second, in an act that was just unheard of, he declared Antinous a god. And third, he personally sponsored a religious cult in Antinous' name that spread across the entire empire. It's this deeply human story of loss, but it's also a chilling reminder of the absolute unchecked power this one man wielded.
For a while, it seemed like Hadrian's dream of this unified Hellenic empire was actually working. But that cosmopolitan ideal would eventually shatter against a fierce rebellion. And when it did, the emperor's capacity for cruelty came roaring back with a vengeance.
This was the Bar Kokhba revolt in Judea. Tensions finally exploded into a massive uprising, and Hadrian's response wasn't diplomacy or cultural understanding, it was total war. The historian Cassius Dio gives us a number that is just staggering. He estimated nearly 600,000 Jewish people were killed, with countless more enslaved or left to die from famine and disease.
The aftermath was a brutal display of his authoritarian side. He didn't just crush the rebellion, he tried to erase an entire culture from the map. He renamed the province Syria Palestina, and he rebuilt Jerusalem as a Roman colony called Aelia Capitolina. He even built a temple to Jupiter right on the site of the destroyed Jewish temple. His dream of a peaceful commonwealth had failed here, and his response was annihilation.
So, where does all of this leave us? Well, we're left with a man who is simply impossible to neatly categorize. He was a protector and a destroyer, a unifier and an eraser of cultures. He is the Hadrian paradox.
I mean, let's just lay out the contradictions one more time. On one side, you have the man who stabilized the empire's borders and poured resources into making life better in the provinces. But on the other, you have the man who executed his rivals without a trial and oversaw a war of extermination. He left us the Pantheon, one of history's true architectural marvels, but his legacy is forever stained with the blood of the Bar Kokhba revolt.
So the crucial question remains, what do you do with a legacy like that? Was he a builder or a tyrant? A genius who preserved the Roman Empire, or a despot who ruled through fear? The truth is, he was all of these things all at once, and that, I think, is why nearly 2,000 years later, we are still trying to figure out the enigma that was Emperor Hadrian.